American Free Press Issue 45 and 46 November 6 and 13, 2017. Cleaning House Rising Tide of Populism, America First Sentiments Forcing Out America Last Senators, Congressmen, by John Friend. A number of Republican senators and congressmen who have publicly criticized President Donald Trump's agenda recently announced they will not be seeking re-election during the next election cycle, signaling yet another triumph of Trump's America First populism, which has divided the GOP between Trump-supporting Republicans and establishment-serving, internationalist Republicans increasingly out of touch with conservative and right-wing voters. Jeff Flake, Arizona's junior Republican senator who frequently criticizes Trump, is facing a tough primary challenge from Kelly Ward, a populist, America First former state senator who has the backing of Trump and former campaign advisor Stephen Bannon. Flake recently announced he would not seek re-election due to the fact his failed conservatism is no longer popular or viable among traditional GOP voters. It is clear at this moment that a traditional conservative who believes in limited government and free markets, who is devoted to free trade, who is pro-immigration has a narrower and narrower path to nomination in the Republican Party, Flake stated during a speech on the Senate floor announcing his decision to not seek re-election. Flake's faux conservatism, which is quickly being discredited by Trump's America First populism and nationalist rhetoric, is simply out of touch with rank-and-file GOP voters, who have been craving the sort of bold, uncompromising leadership Trump and his movement offer and represent. If I could run the kind of race I'd like to run and believe, I could win a Republican primary, I might go forward, Flake later told reporters, underscoring the reality of just how disconnected Flake and other establishment GOP political leaders are. Trump has harshly attacked his GOP critics since becoming president, including Flake. In August, Trump expressed joy that Ms. Ward would be running against Flake, accurately describing the Arizona senator as weak on borders and crime. Tennessee Republican Senator Bob Corker, yet another GOP political leader who has publicly sparred with Trump, also recently announced he would not be seeking re-election in 2018. After much thought, consideration and family discussion over the past year, wife, Elizabeth and I have decided that I will leave the United States Senate when my term expires at the end of 2018, Corker declared in a statement announcing his decision. Corker has repeatedly criticized Trump, perhaps most notably in the aftermath of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, VA. A legally organized and sanctioned rally that was sabotaged by local and state law enforcement and political leaders with left-wing political affiliations. These political developments potentially represent a stark departure from the failed conservatism championed by establishment Republicans, who for far too long have been driven by a globalist, neoconservative, America Last political perspective that is being exposed for the fraud it is by Trump and other America First populists. John McCain, the senior senator from Arizona who is a close ally of Flake, demonstrated just how contrary his increasingly unpopular and out-of-touch brand of conservatism is during a recent speech attacking Trump and his positions. We have to fight isolationism, protectionism, and nativism, McCain stated. We have to defeat those who would worsen our divisions. He later went on to attack the notion that America could put her political and economic interests first, which more and more Americans are becoming increasingly tired of hearing. This newspaper, and millions of Americans across the nation, welcome the rise of an America First, populist political movement, which has been championed so well by Trump thus far. Power elite won't let up on this newspaper. For the past month, American Free Press staffers have been able to accept credit cards from supporters who want to renew their subscriptions or buy books. That's been helpful, because 30% of our revenue comes from credit card sales through the mail, over the phone, and on our website. On October 25, however, a representative from Stripe, our new credit card processor, informed us that they have to cancel our account because we are on the so-called match list. That's the secret blacklist maintained by the credit card industry that we have written about at length in previous editions. It's worth mentioning that, unlike Wells Fargo, which canceled us overnight back in July without even informing us, Stripe gave us 5 days to find a new processor. The truth is, though, once a company or individual is added to the blacklist, it's extremely difficult to find any bank that is willing to work with you. In other words, Stripe's 5-day notice was just an empty courtesy. In past issues, we've detailed how this all works, but it bears repeating. Anytime a private company wants to open up an account to accept credit cards, a credit card processing company will check the name of the company, its business address, and the primary individual named on the account against what is known as the match list. If there is a match, the company is immediately denied, no questions asked, no appeal. For years, MasterCard maintained this list to get a handle on individuals and companies that were committing credit card fraud. In the past, scammers would simply close up shop when they were caught ripping off people and open up a new account. All of it changed, though, when MasterCard created its secret blacklist and began adding not just company names but the names and social security numbers of the principal signers on the accounts. All in all, we consider the concept behind the secret blacklist a good thing. It's meant to keep criminals from ripping people off. Increasingly, though, the blacklist is being exploited as a tool to censor conservative and politically incorrect individuals and companies. We have been added to this list, at the behest of radical leftist groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, as a way to drive us out of business and silence us. The good news is, we believe we will be able to find another credit card processor. It is just going to take some time. Even better news, we believe we have a strong case against the risk management company that was hired by Wells Fargo to assess us as clients. This company, T-Size, could have simply advised Wells Fargo to stop doing business with us. Instead, they went over and above terminating our contract for political reasons and added us to the match list simply because they didn't like a couple of books we sold. We will keep readers posted as this story continues to evolve. In the meantime, on a brighter note, we're coming into Christmas season, and, just like in previous years, we are including in this issue a sizable Christmas catalog of our latest and most popular books and DVDs. Please take a moment to check out the great products we offer. Every dollar you spend goes to help us grow. Unfortunately, it looks like you'll have to send us cash, check, or money order, but at least we won't have to give the bankers a pound of flesh this year. On a final note, please take advantage of our new special gift subscription offer on page 7 in this week's issue. For only $44, you can buy a friend, family member, coworker, really anyone who you think would benefit from our news, a full year of American Free Press. You can save yourself a few bucks and help educate someone close to you with a great gift that can change the way people see the world, something this country desperately needs in these tough times. Christopher J. Petherick, Executive Editor. Obama dodge funneled money to leftists. Administration forced predatory banks to pay $1 billion to radicals. By Alan West. The House Intelligence Committee announced recently that it would be conducting an investigation of Uranium One, as the issue is being called. To summarize, somehow the Obama administration, through the Hillary Clinton State Department, approved the sale of 20% of the U.S.'s uranium stock to a Russian company that was being investigated. Suspiciously, some interesting monetary deposits were made to the Clinton Foundation, along with a $500,000 speaker's fee to Bill Clinton, coinciding with the uranium sale. But what if Uranium One wasn't just the Clinton Foundation running a pay-for-play scheme in conjunction with the Obama administration? What if the Obama administration itself, through its Department of Justice, DOJ, was running a shakedown scheme? As reported by the Daily Caller, Emails written by Obama administration Department of Justice officials confirm reports the agency engaged in a systemic effort to funnel money to liberal advocacy organizations from settlements reached with big banks. The documents, obtained by the House Judiciary Committee as part of an ongoing investigation, revealed the Obama Justice Department effectively skirted Congress's budgetary authority by requiring that major financial institutions donate to a group of affordable housing nonprofits and legal advocacy organizations as part of settlement agreements resulting from predatory mortgage lending practices. The internal DOJ documents represent the latest revelation in a 2-year investigation spearheaded by House Financial Services Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte. The investigation has thus far yielded evidence implicating the Obama DOJ in using mandatory donations to funnel roughly $1 billion in settlement money to activist groups, including the National Council of La Raza, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and the National Urban League. The list of third-party organizations were unrelated to the legal settlements, except through general claims that they would use the funds to aid the low-income Americans most severely harmed by predatory lending practices. Let's have a little history lesson here. First of all, the whole mortgage meltdown of 2008 can be traced back to President Jimmy Carter's Community Reinvestment Act, based on his belief that every American has a right to own a home. Another example of government interjecting itself in our lives, not to allow us to pursue our happiness but instead trying to guarantee our happiness. The end result was government forcing itself into a private sector market, in this case the mortgage industry, as well as enacting punitive measures against private sector lending institutions that did not comply and conduct risky business endeavors. Yes, the private sector lending institutions did wrong in creating the mortgage-backed securities that were sold, knowing they weren't strong or profitable. The end result was the subprime mortgage lending crisis and the revelation that these mortgage-backed securities were worthless. However, this crisis could have been averted had the government never ventured into the mortgage industry in the first place. The same government also used its power to attempt to force lending institutions to take on highly risky endeavors. And yes, many lending institutions that believed they could make money enacted even worse practices, what the government termed predatory lending. The whole scheme, crafted by government in the first place, should never have been unleashed. Along comes Barack Obama, who adeptly used his bully pulpit to demonize lending institutions instead of telling the whole truth, willingly aided by a compliant ally, a liberal progressive media. Obama and his lead henchman at DOJ, Eric Holder, levied fines against these financial lending institutions, not in an attempt to correct the wrong but for far more nefarious purposes. The community organizer-in-chief then funneled funds from the penalties levied against these financial institutions to his administration's preferred progressive socialist organizations. While this has previously been suspected, it is now confirmed. Bottom line, the Obama administration was running a shakedown of financial institutions that sought to settle instead of going through the legal kangaroo court of Holder's DOJ. One is reminded of when, during his election night victory speech, Obama infamously said, "Chicago is coming to Washington, D.C." Now we truly know what that meant. The same style of gangster mentality that once ruled the streets of Chicago, Al Capone style, was heading to our nation's capital. It seems safe to assume this story won't be receiving much, if any, attention from the liberal progressive media. For them, this isn't anything upsetting, just another example of their cronyism, elitism, and corruption, and why we can never allow the progressive socialists of the Democrat Party to have control and power in our government. Americans can never accept this type of behavior, which is reflective of a third world banana republic, not our constitutional republic. Anyone who engages in this type of disgusting behavior is indeed a threat to the country and to the rule of law. Alan Bernard West is an American political commentator, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, and former member of the House of Representatives. Democrats behind fake news dossier. Clinton campaign tied to bogus report on Trump released before presidential election. By John Friend. Throughout the 2016 presidential election, and even following Donald Trump's electoral victory, Democrat strategists, Hillary Clinton and her top aides and supporters, and much of the corporate-owned mass media have attempted to discredit and marginalize Trump by alleging he has ties to and has been influenced by the Russian government. Purported Russian meddling in the 2016 election has been a major talking point for Democrats, who have relentlessly attempted to tie Trump and his closest associates, including his son, Donald Trump Jr., to the Russian government. Democrat partisans and anti-Trump members of the GOP, such as Senator John McCain, Ayres, and other Republican leaders, continue to peddle the largely discredited theory that Russia interfered in the heated 2016 election in order to help Trump triumph in the heated presidential election. Now it has been revealed that the Clinton campaign, working in conjunction with the Democratic National Committee, DNC, funded research that ultimately resulted in the much ballyhooed Russian dossier, which was leaked to the mass media and has been used to promote the largely discredited notion that Trump has deep, compromising ties to Russia, and that the Russians interfered in the election. Early last week, The Washington Post published a detailed report alleging that Mark Elias, a top lawyer for the Clinton campaign and the DNC, retained and financed a Washington-based company called Fusion GPS to conduct the research and amass the dossier. Elias used his law firm, Perkins Coie, to retain Fusion GPS and to pay for its research activities. Elias and DNC officials all have lied, claiming that they did not know who paid for the dossier. The funders were only discovered thanks to a lawsuit brought by a technology mogul who was smeared in the document. The billionaire had sued Fusion GPS along with a mainstream media outlet that posted the entire document to its website for everyone to read. In his suit, he gained access to Fusion GPS's bank accounts and discovered who had paid for the research. Prior to the Clinton campaign and DNC contracting Fusion GPS to conduct the research, the Washington Free Beacon, a conservative news outlet, contracted Fusion GPS to conduct opposition research on then-candidate Trump and many of the other top GOP contenders at the time. Elias, working on behalf of the Clinton campaign and DNC, eventually contracted Fusion GPS to engage in similar research, which was used to buttress Democrat talking points designed to discredit Trump by portraying him as a Russian puppet who was potentially being blackmailed by the Kremlin. Enter the British spy. Fusion GPS then hired Christopher Steele, a former British intelligence official who has close ties to both the FBI and the broader U.S. intelligence community, to put together the dossier, which alleges, among other things, that Russia has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years, The Hill reports. The dossier, entitled, U.S. Presidential Election, Republican Candidate Donald Trump's Activities in Russia and Compromising Relationship with the Kremlin, also alleges that Trump and his top aides accepted a regular flow of intelligence from the Kremlin about Mrs. Clinton. In the dossier, Steele further contends that Trump has deep financial ties to Russia. Additionally, a number of lewd allegations were made about Trump in the dossier, allegations which have been met with skepticism and doubt. Trump has denied all of the charges contained in the dossier, calling it a fake dossier that was made up by disingenuous and dishonest individuals seeking to tarnish his image and reputation in the minds of the American public. Trump has regularly attacked and criticized allegations of Russian meddling in the election, and has denied having close, compromising ties to Russia, describing the allegations as a hoax. I have to say, the whole Russian thing is what it's turned out to be. Trump explained to reporters following reports demonstrating the Russia dossier report was financed and compiled largely at the behest of the Clinton campaign and DNC. This was the Democrats coming up with an excuse for losing an election. The dossier is a collection of 17 memos authored by Steele between June 20 and December 13, 2016. In the memos, Steele cites conversations he had with unnamed Russian sources, many of whom he paid for their information. Former FBI Director James Comey briefed Trump and former President Barack Obama on the dossier prior to the election. Comey described it as salacious and unverified in testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Many of the claims made in the dossier have been debunked, and many others have not been verified and likely never will be. Several DNC leaders and many former Clinton campaign officials have denied involvement or knowledge about the Russian dossier and Fusion GPS's role in compiling it. DNC Chairman Tom Perez and top DNC leaders were not involved in any decision-making regarding Fusion GPS, nor were they aware that Perkins Coie was working with the organization, a DNC spokeswoman recently told The Washington Post. Discounted AFP Christmas gift subscriptions, just $44 for 1 year. Not ICE. AFP can notify your gift subscribers that you are the donor of their 1-year gift subscription. If you would like a Christmas card sent in your name, just check yes below each person's name. Sorry, no toll-free calls for this promotion. Mail-in only. Use an additional sheet of paper for more names if necessary. Type or print neatly all names and addresses. Send payment or information to AFP, 16,000 Trade Zone Avenue, Unit 406, Upper Marlboro, Doctor of Medicine 20774. Call 202-544-5977 with any inquiries. Monday 39 to 5 Eastern Time. Were promises of dirt on Hillary Clinton a honeypot set up to trap Trump? 3 times shady Russian middleman dangled dirt on Hillary but never came through. By Robert Romano. Meetings set up with Trump campaign officials. Promises of dirt on Hillary Clinton being offered by the Russians. People involved were not who they say they were or did not furnish the information they said they would. Sound familiar? We're talking about Donald Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort's June 2016 meeting with the Russian lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, right? The one where the promise of damaging information on Mrs. Clinton was used to get the meeting but was never actually furnished? Wrong. We're talking about George Papadopoulos, a former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor and volunteer, who has pled guilty to lying to the FBI about the timing of his joining the Trump campaign and his subsequent contacts with persons he apparently believed were connected to the Russian government. On October 30, the special counsel's office investigating the Trump campaign for supposedly colluding with the Russians released the statement of offense and the plea deal that Papadopoulos agreed to. According to that statement, which was signed by special counsel Robert Mueller, in March 2016 and while in Italy, Papadopoulos met an overseas professor based in London who claimed to have substantial connections with Russian government officials. Eventually he was introduced to a female Russian national who Papadopoulos thought was Vladimir Putin's niece, with the purpose being to set up an eventual meeting between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. It turns out she was not related to Putin. On April 26, Papadopoulos was teased by the professor that, according to the special counsel, the Russians had obtained dirt on then-candidate Clinton. The professor told defendant Papadopoulos, as defendant Papadopoulos later described to the FBI, that they, the Russians, have dirt on her. The Russians had emails of Clinton. They have thousands of emails. This apparently was referring to the missing emails from Clinton's private server that contained classified information and had been reported to have been hacked variously by Marcel Lehelaser, aka Gluckcipher, the Russians, and others. By then, Papadopoulos was attempting to arrange a history-changing meeting between Trump and Putin, but the idea was nixed by then-Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, according to the Daily News. We need someone to communicate that Donald Trump, is not doing these trips, Manafort told his business partner Rick Gates per the Daily News report. So no collusion there. Meetings were proposed, but never accomplished. Even if they had been, having meetings is not a crime in itself. Notably, nowhere in the special counsel's filing does it purport that Papadopoulos actually ever received the damaging Clinton dossier or met with the real Russian officials. Instead, The filing merely states that Papadopoulos thought he was meeting with such officials. For example, the professor, per the special counsel, claimed to have substantial connections with Russian government officials. On Putin's purported niece, Papadopoulos believed that she had connections to Russian government officials. At one point, Papadopoulos was introduced to an individual in Moscow who told defendant Papadopoulos he had connections to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Nowhere does the statement of offense confirm these contacts actually had the connections they were purporting. If not Russian agents, then, who might have been teasing Papadopoulos with this dirt on Mrs. Clinton? Well, one hint might come from the fact that similar bait was used by Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya to get the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. According to the email chain released by Trump Jr., an associate by the name of Rob Goldstone offered in an early June 2016 email that the Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father Aras this morning and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This eventually resulted in the June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower with Ms. Veselnitskaya. None of the supposed incriminating information was apparently ever furnished, though, instead, Ms. Veselnitskaya wanted to discuss U.S. sanctions on Russia via the Magnitsky Act. Trump Jr. called it a wasted 20 minutes. The meeting was not what it appeared to be. It also sounds a lot like the same incriminating information on Mrs. Clinton that was similarly teased in the Christopher Steele-authored dossier that was produced by Fusion GPS, which we now know was funded by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee via the law firm Perkins Coie. In the Steele documents, former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page was also said to have been offered the Clinton dossier. A senior colleague in the internal political department of the PA, Divakin, NFD, also had met secretly with Carter Page on his recent visit to Moscow. Their agenda had included Divakin raising a dossier of compromise the Kremlin possessed on Trump's Democratic presidential rival, Hillary Clinton, and its possible release to the Republicans' campaign team. Page has denied such meetings took place. There you have not one, not two, but three examples where the Trump campaign was offered similar incriminating information on Mrs. Clinton, supposedly by Russia. Perhaps the Papadopoulos overture had failed, and so the same thing was tried again at different levels. The fact that it happened more than once can be no coincidence, however, even more so because Bill Browder, the CEO and co-founder of Hermitage Capital, testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on July 26 that Ms. Veselnitskaya had been working with Fusion GPS. Yes, the same Fusion GPS that commissioned Steele to write the dossier. Browder said, Veselnitskaya, through Baker Hostetler, hired Glenn Simpson of the firm Fusion GPS to conduct a smear campaign against me and Sergei Magnitsky in advance of congressional hearings on the Global Magnitsky Act. Ms. Veselnitskaya, who per Browder once hired Fusion GPS for a similar smear campaign, was teasing the Clinton Russia-produced dossier to Trump Jr. as bait. Fusion GPS was reporting via Steele that Page had been teased with this same information as bait. A very good question that congressional investigators on the House and Senate Intelligence Committees should be asking is if this professor, Putin's niece, and this supposed contact to the Russian Foreign Ministry were somehow connected to Fusion GPS, too. What if they're all connected? This all violates the law of too many coincidences. The Russian government offered 3 times to deliver dirt on Mrs. Clinton to the Trump campaign, and each time, it never produced the dirt. What purpose did this operation serve? Whose agenda? Was the Trump campaign being set up with this promise of dirt on Mrs. Clinton, her missing emails, and offers of meetings? Was it Russia? Or were all these efforts really a sting operation by the FBI or somebody else? Robert Romano is the Vice President of Public Policy at the conservative watchdog group Americans for Limited Government. Order the latest issue of the Barnes Review, Defending Dixie. The idea that those with ancestors who fought on the southern side of the war between the states should be ashamed of their sacrifices, or that the Southern flag displayed in any form is merely a symbol of bigotry, hatred and racial oppression is ridiculous. Perhaps for some it is, but not for the 99% of right-thinking Americans who relish true history. The fact is, when most Southerners look at that flag, they do not even think of slavery. They think about the courage it took to fight for self-determination and states' rights, something the powers that be hate you contemplating. The guilt trip the rabid, radical left is foisting on Southerners is the cornerstone of an effort to bring the people of the South to heel and into the New World Order. But a good dose of the truth is what they all need. In this special, expanded 112-page issue, we have assembled as many interviews and revisionist articles as we could jam in explaining these facts. It could have been 500 pages. Articles in this issue cover the real reasons behind the removal of monuments dedicated to Southern heroes, the truth about the Fort Pillow massacre, an honest appraisal of the Gray Ghost, tariffs, the real cause of the war, interviews with monument activists and historians Lachlan Seabrook, Eddie Vries and Charles Edward Lincoln III, secret societies and the Civil War, blockade runners of the South, Sherman's annihilation policy, Dixie's dark secret, rich, black slaveholders, memoirs of a rebel private, the Cherokee General, the Missouri Exodus, the cultural cleansing of the South, Maryland's state song on the chopping block, the Jim Crow double cross and more. We need to get as many copies of this special expanded edition of the Barnes Review into the hands of as many people as possible, and you can help us in this endeavor for the sake of true history, our past and our future. Individual issues of this 112-page issue are available in bulk and are discounted. The more you buy, the lower the price. Note, we have just recently ordered an additional 1,000 copies of this issue, so, if you would like one for yourself and are not a subscriber, order now. The only difference between the reprinted issue and the original run is that the interior is black and white. All other details remain the same. Bulk prices. 1-5 copies are $10 each, 6-10 copies are $9 each, 11-25 are $8 each, 26 or more are $7 each. No further discounts. In the US, add $5 S&H on orders up to $50. Add $10 S&H on orders from $50.01 to $100. Add $15 S&H on orders over $100. Outside U.S. email sales, at barnesreview.org for foreign S&H. Check, cash and money order accepted. Send payment using the form below and mail to TBR, P.O. Box 15877, Washington, D.C. 20003. Call 1-877-773-9077. Toll free to reserve your issues in advance and to charge. You can charge online, at the time we went to press, at www.barnesreview.com. Don't let the left dictate our history. Show the world at the north, south, east, and west of this nation have people who understand that the mainstream narrative about our country is a fraud designed to separate us from our glorious past and cause racial dissension.